Ruth chapter 4. So we are at the final chapter. Just a little recap on chapter 3. When we ended chapter 3, we read about how Boaz was willing to become the redeemer of the land and suggested that there was a closer relative who could do that. And Boaz said that if that person is not willing to, Boaz will take up the responsibility. And so now we get to chapter 4, where the actions that Boaz promised Ruth that he will do is described how he is doing it. We're here in Ruth chapter 4, and we read about Boaz going up to the gate and sat down there. Now, one of the things that many people are not aware whenever we read the word gate, this is the entrance and the exit to the city of Bethlehem. And you find that the gates are mentioned all over the Old Testament. And the reason being is that the gate is a very important place in the daily lives of the community. They basically do their trading, the buying and selling at the gate. But more importantly, they make decisions at the gate, which means that there will be elders, there will be people of authority that will actually sit and judge cases. And so Boaz went up to the gate. There is no other place. There is no court, right, in the Hebrew times. So the place where the elders or the leaders will sit will be at the gate. And so he went to the gate and he sat down. And then behold, the close relative whom Boaz had spoken also came by. So Boaz said, "Come aside, friend, sit down here." And so they were supposed to be seated to discuss this. So in chapter 4, verse 2, you find that he is called a particular one, somebody which we don't have a name given. So we can probably call him an anonymous person whom is identified in the English called friend. And Boaz asked him, "Come, sit down here." And so he came aside and sat down. Then he took 10 men of the elders of the city. So you notice, 10 is a complete number. So always remember 10. 10 is a share, and that would be a symbolic of a complete set of people, right? And of the elders, we're not talking about young men. We're talking about people who are respected elders, who are the elderly and respected for their wisdom of the city. And says, "Sit down here." And so they sat down. So now we have Boaz, this certain anonymous relative, and 10 elders, all seated at the gate. In verse 3, then Boaz said to the close relative, "Naomi, who has come back from the country of Moab, sold the piece of land which belonged to our brother Elimelech." Now notice we have to be quite clear of our ideas of where the land is. Number one, the land was actually sold. And in this case, it was surrendered sold for a price, probably. And this land belonged to our brother Elimelech, which is the husband of Naomi. And when was this piece of land sold? We don't know. But it appears that from verse 3 here, that the land was actually sold after Elimelech died. Now, I don't know how it was sold, and we don't know how it was sold, but that was basically what we do know, is that it was Naomi who sold it, right? And it belongs to our brother Elimelech. And the reason why the close relative and Boaz was together is because they are very close relative to Elimelech, right? Now in verse 4, and I thought to inform. Now inform means to say it to your ear so that you understand, so you know it, right? And what is this that Boaz wanted him to think about? It is very much this idea to buy it back. Now, the word buy here literally means to acquire back. To acquire back in the presence of the inhabitants. There are people who are already there, taken over the land. And the elders of my people. Who are these elders? These are the elders, the 10 of them, right? And so all of these have to be seen. Now, the idea here is called redeem. The question of redeem is to, well, how do we say it? It is that this land is rightfully belonging to the family of Elimelech, but it has been sold. And so now we need to bring it back into the ownership of Elimelech's family. The reason this is done is because at this point in time, it was sold, and maybe we may not understand the word sell. You could say that it was actually maybe in our modern day word, pawn, because you needed the money. So you use the land title to exchange it for some money, so that later on, when you have the money, you can come back and buy back the land. But you need to understand that land itself in Israel, or in their practice, cannot be transferred to a different family, which means that you can't sell a land that belongs to Judah to somebody who is to another tribe. And at the same time, you must actually sell the land back to the original family, because the land actually belongs to them, because it's an inheritance from God. The ownership of the land came from the time of Joshua, when they entered and conquered the land and divided the land up to the 12 tribes. And so now we have a case where the land is no longer in possession of Elimelech's family, which is Naomi, and it is time to redeem. So the word redeem is to buy back. Buy back, pay for it, all right? So that it will come back into its original family, right? So that's the word redeem. And if you will not redeem it, then tell me, that I may know. For there is no one but you to redeem it, and I am next after you. So you need to understand the process. Naomi sold the land. And now the land has to come back to Naomi. And this is the redemption, redeem. And it's either Boaz or the relative who is closer than Boaz, and you will come back to the family of Elimelech. And how does it come back to the family of Elimelech? Is that Boaz, being a close relative, is good enough in that sense. Okay? But the other thing is, there was another important element. The other important element is in verse 5. Because after Boaz said, will you do this? And he says, I will do it. I will redeem it. And he thought that that was all, right? And that was the land that he will own. But verse 5 says, Boaz says, on the day you buy the field from the hand of Naomi, you must also buy it from Ruth the Moabitess, the wife of the dead, to perpetuate the name of the dead through his inheritance. Which means this: the land redeemed comes back to Naomi, and then from Naomi into the hand of the relative, as well as marrying Ruth, because Ruth is the widow of the dead, which is the son. The son is to inherit it, so Ruth represents the son who has died. And hence, when this relative marries Ruth, everything is kept in the family. And so the whole picture here is to keep in the family. And then the redemption is complete. All right? So as long as we understand this, then we will know that it is not merely the land, but it is also necessary to symbolically represent that the entire family, including the one who should inherit it, which is the son, but he also died. And so somebody else needs to take the place of the son to perpetuate the name of the dead son, right? The son of Elimelech. Who would want to do that? So now in verse 6, it says the close relative said, oh, I cannot do that. If I do that, I would ruin my own inheritance, because whatever he owns now belongs to Ruth, Naomi, and Elimelech's family. Then he said, well, in that case, I cannot do that. You can redeem for yourself, because I cannot redeem it. Now, this was the custom in former times in Israel concerning redeeming and exchanging to confirm anything. One man took off his sandal, gave it to the other, and this was a confirmation in Israel. Now, remember, this is a custom or tradition. So you can actually see from the text itself, like in verse 7, how people seal their deals in the past with regards to redemption and exchange. If you want to confirm, you take the sandal. What you walk, you will walk with the person. That is symbolic, right? You will walk with that person. Therefore, the close relative said to Boaz, buy it for yourself. And so he took off his sandal and gave it to Boaz. And Boaz said to the elders and all the people, you are witnesses this day that I have bought all that was Elimelech's, and that was Chilion's and Mahlon from the hand of Naomi. So remember, these are important. These are the dead sons. And these are the sons that should inherit from Elimelech. And Naomi will pass on to the dead sons. But the dead sons are dead. So how do the dead sons perpetuate? The trick is, it's in Ruth. Because Ruth is the widow And thereby, she becomes a very critical part of this transaction. Moreover, Ruth the Moabitess, the widow of Mahlon, I have acquired as my wife to perpetuate the name of the dead. Who is the dead? Mahlon. Through his inheritance, that the name of the dead may not be cut off from among his brethren and his position at the gate. You are witnesses to this day. This is the entire story, the core of the story of Ruth. That Boaz was willing to forego his own inheritance and use his own name to marry Ruth to continue the name of Mahlon as well as the name of Elimelech. This is a very incredible exchange and redemption, one that he was prepared to give up of himself for the sake of his relative, Elimelech, and so that his family will continue the good name. His position at the gate, which means that there is a place for Elimelech at the gate. And Boaz now takes that position on behalf of that family. And then you are witnesses. This is important with the idea of witness. A witness is somebody who is present, who have seen, heard, and thereby he can testify. And that is what witnesses mean. That in this actual transaction, Boaz has agreed to do all these things. And all the 10 elders becomes the witness. If anything happens, then you have 10 persons to ask. Now, one of the important rules of witnesses is that there needs to be at least 2 to 3 witnesses. And here there are 10, a complete number. The reply, all the people who were at the gate, because it's not just Boaz, the relative, and the 10 elders, there were people there. Remember I told you that the gate is a very busy place. So there were people who were there as well, and they can also testify. And the elders said, we are witnesses. The Lord make the woman who is coming to your house like Rachel and Leah, the two who built the house of Israel. And may you prosper in Ephrathah and be famous in Bethlehem. Bethlehem is in Ephrathah. So understand the way that the Hebrew express A, B, it's the same thing. It's saying the same thing twice, basically. So may you prosper and be famous is speaking about the same thing. The word prosper would be to be reputable, to be rich, to be powerful in Ephrathah, which is the same place as Bethlehem. To be famous, which means that his name will be great. So prosper and famous are 2 angles to them blessing. This is a blessing. And as witnesses, they bless them. And so may your house be like the house of Perez, whom Tamar bore to Yehudah, because of the offspring which the Lord will give you from this young woman. And this is a blessing of the next generation. Now, if you are not aware, Judah had 3 sons. He died, and the 3rd son wasn't given to Tamar to be a wife. And so Tamar pretended to be a prostitute and had sex with Yehuda. And from here, gave birth to Perez. And that's where we get the house of Perez. And this perpetuated the house of Judah. And this is where we are. Judah is the tribe and the land which they are all in right now in Bethlehem of Ephratah is the place where they live in that belongs to Judah and the tribes of Judah. And that is how serious they become. Now, as we close the book of Ruth, then we have the genealogy. Boaz took Ruth and she became his woman. Remember, wife is a modern day term. The old days is called woman, the Isha. And she became his woman. And when he went into her, the Lord gave her conception and she bore a son. Then the women said to Naomi, "Blessed be the Lord, who has not left you this day without a close relative, and may his name be famous in Israel." By Boaz taking Ruth and redeeming the land, he is now taking over the children of Naomi. And the house of Elimelech is perpetuated in the family of Boaz and Ruth. And this is a blessing. And it says, "May he be to you a restorer of life." Verse 15, a restorer of life is to bring life back to where you had no more sons. Your husband died, your 2 sons died, and now you have a son again in Boaz. And a nourisher of your old age, because Boaz will then take care of Naomi. Then he says, "For your daughter-in-law who loves you," then that will be Ruth, "who is better than you than 7 sons, has borne him." The people acknowledges the value of Ruth to Naomi. As a daughter-in-law, better to you than 7 sons. You know, the number 7 is a perfect number. And that's how it's used in the Old Testament, right? And this is really a testimony to Ruth, a woman at that time, and a woman who was absolutely faithful to Naomi, to her people, and to her God. And in this case, willing to continue life with Boaz. Then Naomi took the child and laid it on her bosom and became a nurse to him. Also, the neighbor women gave him a name, saying, "There is a son born to Naomi." And they called his name Obed. His name is Obed. Obed comes from the word avad, which means a servant, to serve. So Obed is the father of Jesse, the father of David. And this is the genealogy, right? 18, 19, 20, 21, 22. So let us wrap this up. The genealogy of Perez. So we have Judah, Perez, with Tamar, Hezron, Ram, Amin, Nadab, Nashon, N-A-H. Nashon, Salmon, not Salmon, right? Salmon, Boaz, Obed, Jesse, and David. And the entire story of Ruth is actually to lead on to how David's ancestors came to bring this about. Because without Boaz, there will be no David. And so the intent is to show us that it is critical to hold Elimelech household together. And the household comes from here, Boaz. And with Boaz and Ruth, that's where we get David. And so this gives us a very interesting picture how when the land was lost and when there were no children for Naomi, that she have Boaz to become that person, the close relative. And many people call him the kinsman redeemer, the relative who redeemed the land back into the family, and at the same time become the family of Elimelech to continue the family name on behalf of Elimelech and his sons. That is an extreme gesture to give up of his own estate and then to live a life to perpetuate, and that's where we get the man after God's heart, David. And with this, we end the book of Ruth.
Boaz's father is Salmon.
Salmon, yes.
Salmon.
And but here it said that when he brought over the inheritance, he lost his own inheritance, but he is still the son of Salmon, and family tree continued to Obed is under Salmon's family and not Ruth's husband's family tree.
Correct, but Boaz plays two roles, right? He perpetuates the ownership of the land. The land doesn't change. The land stays with Elimelech, but Boaz becomes what you call a conduit. He combines both. So he represents Mahlon, in terms of the land, not in terms of the genealogy.
Okay.
So we have to be clear that the discussion of Ruth and Boaz are two. One is about the land, to redeem back the land from Naomi for the family of Elimelech. But because Naomi had no more children, no more sons, and so there's no one to perpetuate to keep the inheritance. And so Boaz becomes the one who will take care of the land and to make sure the land stays in the family of Elimelech.
That's a rookie play.
It is more for the land. More for the land, because the land cannot, they make sure the land doesn't change hands. So
but
this
his
is
own land.
He has his own land, that's right. He has his own land, but he has his own land plus Naomi's land to take care of.
Or just to take care, but not belonging to him. I actually am not very sure of what is the
this way. The land, there are two things here in terms of the redemption. What he has, what Boaz has, Boaz has. What he did for Naomi and then married Ruth is to make sure the land that Elimelech had under Naomi continues under Elimelech. Now, the confusion is that Boaz and Elimelech are close relatives, and in fact, right now, they have married each other. And so, they are now two families in one.
So the property will be still under Boaz.
You'll be
but
still under
also
Boaz.
under Elimelech.
And yes, and then he can hold it on behalf of Mahlon, but then note that Mahlon doesn't exist anymore. It exists under Ruth. And so it's a symbolic gesture, like when Judah's son died and did not have a child, a descendant. And so Tamar made sure that there was a continuation for the son. So Perez technically is belonging to the elder son, but his name is no longer, because it was Judah who perpetuated on behalf of the elder son. So you see a little bit of things that move from here to here, and from Boaz onwards, you could see that the combining with Elimelech's family. This is commonly called redemption. Yeah. If Boaz didn't do this, the land that belongs to Elimelech will forever be gone.
Okay.
Okay? All right. Bye.
Bye. Thank you.
Thank you.